Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Alex Trianis, Dean of the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Carey Business School Distinguished Speaker Series with our special guest, Ms. Stephanie Linnartz. Through our Distinguished Speaker Series, we bring to you the most accomplished business professionals to discuss today's most compelling business challenges. Our topic for discussion today is Pivot or Perish: how to reimagine your business to compete in the future. These are challenging times for many businesses, and the COVID-19 pandemic has been particularly difficult for the travel and hospitality sectors. Stephanie Linnartz leads Marriott International's consumer strategy, focused on both core hotel operations and new business ventures. She is responsible for a wide range of critical business functions, including all aspects of brand management, sales, marketing, revenue management, distribution, customer experience and innovation, information technology, and digital. Under Stephanie's leadership, the company launched a new home rental offering, Homes and Villas by Marriott International, and has expanded its consumer offerings to include tours and activities, dining, and transportation. Stephanie grew up in a hotel industry family and has spent her entire career working in hospitality. In 2017, Hotel Management named her one of the 30 influential women in hospitality. And she was also honored by Brand Innovators as one of the 2018 top 100 women in brand marketing. CNN profiled her in 2019 for its Risk Takers series. Stephanie is also a member of the Marriott Board of Directors Inclusion and Social Impact Committee and the company's Green Council. She also serves on the Board of Directors for the Home Depot Incorporated and the Board of Trustees for our alma mater, the College of the Holy Cross. I'll start a discussion with a few questions, and then later on, you will have an opportunity to ask your own questions using the Zoom Q&A function. So Stephanie, welcome to our virtual stage.
Thank you for having me, Alex. Wonderful to be with you all.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. And I thought we should start the way that most conversations start these days, for better or worse, which is just to discuss how you, your team, and your company are faring during this pandemic. So I'll start off by asking, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the travel, tourism, and hospitality industries especially hard, both domestically and internationally. And so I was hoping you could share with us how Marriott has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic in particular, first of all, in terms of its customers and its employees.
Sure, absolutely. You're right, Alex. This is COVID-19, and this global pandemic has been quite devastating to the global travel business. And just a couple quick statistics on that front. Some of the estimates are by the end of this year, we'll lose over 200 million global travel and tourism jobs, and 3.4 trillion in global GDP will be lost because of this pandemic. It's really been significant, and like nothing I've ever seen in my 23 coming up on 24 years with Marriott International. So in terms of how we've dealt with this, these tough times, I'll start with really, well, what we've done with the customers and the associates. There's some overlap there. On the customer front and the associate front, the very first order of business was to make sure that everybody was safe and secure. So we set up a global a cleanliness council with people across our entire company. We're in 145 different countries, so with operators of our hotels across the globe, and also health and medical experts and how to stay safe with the virus out there. So this really helped us set up all the right cleaning protocols in our hotels to keep both our associates and our guests safe. So we always have very clean hotels, but during a situation like this, you take it to the next level. I mean, with electrostatic sprayers, making sure we were on a regular basis spraying down all the public spaces, making sure that there was a heightened level of cleanliness in the guest room, and also letting people forgo housekeeping service if they wanted to during their stay, signage for social distancing throughout the hotel, only allowing, a certain amount of people in the elevators, et cetera. So really making sure that for people who were staying in the property, that they were, very safe and secure. And we also need to make sure that they knew about it, right? So we had to communicate that with our customers. So we put a lot of communication out on our website and our app, and as you can imagine, so people knew, what was happening at one of our hotels. We had to follow all the laws and regulations in a particular state or country or region of the world. So communication with our customers was really key. And again, at the same time, very important that our employees felt safe and secure. So that was really the first order of business as this thing started to unfold, was to make sure people were safe and secure in our properties. I will say that in the early days of this crisis, about 25% of our hotels were actually closed down completely. So that was tough, but almost all of our hotels are open at this point. So, just a couple other things I'd note on the customer front is our most valuable customers are our Marriott Bonvoy members. That's our loyalty program. Hopefully some of you are part of it, if not all of you, but we have 145 million members. Alex, you're a member, right?
I said guilty.
You've got your points.
Absolutely. Very happy member.
Yep. Well, we want to make sure that our best customers stay engaged even when they're not traveling, and that they stay with us throughout this. So for our loyalty members, and particularly our elites, we did things like we extended the elite status. So if because you couldn't earn it because you're not traveling, or we did things like pause points expiration, things of that nature to show that we're in this with you. We understand these are extraordinary times, and how can we make our loyalty members feel like we get it, and you don't need to worry about earning your status this year, obviously, when you're not traveling, et cetera. The other thing we did is we rolled out very quickly a lot of digital tools so that customers we had already started this, but we expedited it so people could check in and check out on their phone and go right to their room using their phone as a key. Right, so they didn't have to have any human contact with someone at the front desk. This was already being rolled out pre-COVID, but we really supercharged those efforts. As just one example. So there's many things. I don't want to go on and on too much, but those are a number of examples of things that we did to quickly pivot and deal with a situation that none of us could have ever imagined. I've lived through a lot of downturns at Marriott, and nothing's been quite like this one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously, as with all hospitality related companies, there was an immediate hit to the stock price as well. I'm kind of curious, how were you able to communicate with your investors and try to get them back to sort of a long-term view of the stock as well?
Yeah, that's actually happened pretty quickly. We're actually, our stock price is back up to, levels pre-pandemic, not our 52-week high, but looking pretty good, because I think what we were able to demonstrate to Wall Street was that we were able to candidly quickly cut our costs, very, very quickly cut our costs to react to what was happening to the business, shore up our liquidity. Our CFO did an amazing job of getting some financing lined up to get us through. And she really relied on me and her other business partners, though, because we were the ones who had to quickly cut our costs to demonstrate to the banks that we could move this quickly, and that we were that agile in reacting to this downturn. And then I think, as bad as things were this spring, they've gotten progressively better. I mean, it's every month's been better than the month before, and I can share some of those statistics if you want later in our conversation. But we were able to demonstrate to Wall Street we were doing the right things, the business was getting better, and then we'd point the analysts to places like China, where our business, believe it or not, because they've been able to control the virus, is almost back to pre-pandemic levels. So I think we're able to demonstrate when certain parts of the world get the virus under control, and of course, this was pre-vaccine. And of course, I think the most recent strong performance is, of course, tied to the vaccine news, which is fabulous. And I think bodes very well for our business coming back quite strong next year.
So you talked a little bit about some of the business coming back. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about sort of the leisure segment of the market versus the business segment, and where you see sort of the long-term effects might be in terms of picking back up completely.
Yeah, I mean, there is very little sign of business travel coming back right now. There's some more, small business, local drive-to business, but leisure has been the fastest segment to recover by far. We saw this summer, depending on where you were in the world, or in this case in the United States, a lot of drive-to business coming back. People love to travel. People really want to get out and explore their state, their country. There wasn't a lot of international travel, obviously, this summer, but so we started to see the leisure traveler be the most resilient. And so that was, our company has historically, our bread and butter has been the business traveler, even though we have a ton of fabulous resorts and around the world, and we're into all inclusive, et cetera, but our bread and butter in many ways has been business travel. So we've had to pivot our marketing and a lot of our efforts towards gaining more leisure travels. But, and then the way leisure travel drive-to came back first, or, that it did kind of peak and kind of level off in September when people went back to school, as you would imagine. And then believe it or not, there's some small meeting business out there, not a lot. I think the last business to come back for our company will be business travel and large group and meeting business. And of course, international travel, right? That'll be some of the last business to come back. But the recovery that we have seen has been leisure led, for sure.
You gave an example before of a technological solution that helped during the crisis, or is helping during the crisis, of sort of the keyless rooms and so on. Any other technological solutions that have been adapted during this time more quickly than you might have predicted that will have a long-term effect?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the technology innovation has been around our mobile app, and not just for checking in and checking out and using your phone as a key, but also for chatting. We've added a lot of chat functionality in the mobile app, so you can chat with the front desk or housekeeping versus having to talk to somebody, or you can do it all via your mobile phone. We've have a lot of new functionality around allowing you to order food and beverage and room service from your phone, because a lot of people don't want to go to the restaurant if they're traveling. But a lot of the technology is also even in the cleaning space. I mean, these electrostatic sprayers that we're using are the latest and greatest technology in cleaning protocols. So, but a lot of the technology, it's mobile these days, right? We all do everything on our mobile phone. So I think a lot of the innovation on the technology has been there. We've also done quite a bit of, I think, innovating in some new businesses that we've gotten into, and a lot of those are powered by technology. Our homes and villas business would be one example. That really is it's a digital business, because we don't own the homes, right? We just are the platform by which people are able to rent them through Marriott Bonvoy. So that business has been interesting. We started that last year. It's only a year old, and it's grown just incredibly, because back to the point about leisure leading the recovery, home rentals have been something consumers were very interested in this year, even more than the past, because they could be just with their family, or a lot of people, because everyone's working remote, they can, kind of rent a home. And if, particularly when the kids if people have kids that are doing school remotely, they can do school from anywhere, right? So our home rental business has grown. It's still small by comparisons to Airbnb or VRBO, but it's grown exponentially during this crisis. And again, that's all enabled through technology. And you can earn and you can burn Marriott Bonvoy points. But again, it's a digital platform. It's a digital business, just like Airbnb is a digital business. So that was an innovation, and really a digital technical innovation that exploded this year because of the situation with the virus.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, as we've all learned, I guess, of how to deal with the crisis and how to maybe in the future better prepare for potential future crises. Is there a change in terms of culture or processes or anything to sort of future-proof your business and be ready for whatever crises or disruptions may come next?
Yeah, I think this one was was extraordinary in a lot of ways. I mean, one of the ways we tried to mitigate our risk or diversify our business was, well, number one, we bought Starwood in 2016. I think because being bigger and having more scale helped us compete more with the digital superpowers out there, if you will. So that was one thing we did. We have 30 brands, and that's always been a good buffer for us because people can trade down or trade up depending on the economy. I mentioned, so 30 brands, everything from Ritz-Carlton and St. Regis in W and Edition to Fairfield Inns and Courtyards, right? So that depth and breadth of brand portfolio has always been a little bit of a protector during bad times, right? Furthermore, we're in 145 countries. So usually, this is the exception this year, usually the whole world doesn't go down at once, right? This way, right? I mean, this has been a global epic. I mean, I can share some of the stats from our business we've never seen. So our traditional means of living through economic downturns have kind of didn't work this time, right? Because it was all brands, all travel globally overnight. And, in terms of how we prepare for something like that in the future, wow, I don't know. I mean, I think we will continually to make sure that we have a strong balance sheet, right? I think there's some lessons we've learned or on the finance side that we have a strong balance sheet. Without bringing you into all the details, some of the ways we work with our owners and franchisees in terms of which costs, we cover and get reimbursed for and how that all works. I think we'll rethink some of that so that our liquidity is even stronger. So I think we've learned some inside baseball things on the finance side that we'll take. But I also think we've learned a lot about how to move more quickly, to be more agile. When you're a big global company, you can, I think sometimes if you're not careful, get a little bureaucratic, move too slowly. And we've had to move on a dime. And that expression that, necessity is the mother of invention has never been more true. And I think we've built some muscle through this thing that we're going to keep, that's going to prepare us more for the next time. I think we've learned some lessons about that, good can be perfect can be the enemy of good. And we need to just move sometimes more quickly to get things out the door and perfect them later. So I think those are some of the things that we learned this time that will carry forward to what I hope is never something like this again in any of our lifetimes. But if it happens, we will have learned some lessons.
Absolutely, and clearly one of the biggest impacts, and particularly for Marriott, was the impact on employees, and obviously going through the layoffs. I still remember seeing the video of Arne Sorensen that sort of went viral in terms of how authentic of a leader he was, talking about the employees. So I'm just curious sort of how you've ridden through that, how it's impacted the stress of your employees, and when do you start to restaff again, and how do you approach that?
Yeah, that by far, Alex, has been the most difficult part of this crisis, is the impact on our people. We always say the most important stakeholder for us is our associate, because the associate is the means by which we get to our customers, right? We're in the hospitality business. And just as a little context, Marriott has about 750,000 employees globally who wear our name badge. 96% of them work at a hotel. So just to give you some context of how big our workforce is and where the people are. So when at the worst of this, we had 25% of our hotels closed, completely closed. Imagine all the jobs just impacted from the hotel closures, not to speak of the ones that were still open but had virtually no business. So really the impact to our, and of course at corporate headquarters and in regional offices, there were very tough times too, but the bulk of our associates are at the hotel. So when this thing started to really become globally, widespread in April, we furloughed tens of thousands of people. And it was really, really tough. I mean, some of the things we did to take care of people during that time is we paid for health insurance. We still paid the health insurance so people didn't lose their health insurance. We set up a portal or a means by which our associates could go get jobs at other companies that were thriving. I'll give you an example. I'm on the board of Home Depot, as you mentioned. I picked up the phone in April, called the CEO of Home Depot, and I said, I need your help. Never be afraid to ask for help. And I said, you're thriving. And I think, Alex, you and I were chatting about this the other day. I think everybody in America was painting their living room or building a deck. Home Depot's business was exploding. They're, along with Amazon or, the grocery stores. So the Home Depot, within 3 days, they set up a website for our employees to apply for jobs. And they needed the people too. We were helping them. We have well-trained, hospitable, wonderful associates. And I've just used that as an example. There were other companies that we partnered with to try to help people get jobs. I'll share one more story with you in terms of kind of helping people navigate through this. In the midst of this, the state of New York just simply could not keep up with the unemployment claim request. I mean, their call centers were just falling apart. So the partner that I work with a lot at Deloitte said, the state of New York is looking for some help to deal with this. We have 22 call centers, customer engagement centers around the world, and we had all these reservation agents out of work because no one was calling to book rooms, right? And so we said, well, can they start processing unemployment claims for the state of New York? I know that sounds kind of crazy, but actually it worked. So we rolled the software out to our call centers. We trained our agents on how to process unemployment claims for the state of New York. It was a win-win. We saved something like 800 jobs. This was in the United States, but we saved 800 call center jobs throughout the whole crisis. They worked the whole time. We helped our fellow Americans and the people that were from New York that worked in the call centers were really happy about this because they helped their fellow New York, citizens get their unemployment checks, which were desperately needed. And it was an example again of, crisis creating creativity and us figuring out a way to help as many people as possible. So, I think, and then we did end up permanently having to eliminate a bunch of jobs later in the fall. A bunch of people did come back to work though, as our hotels started to reopen and the business started to come back. But I just think, if you saw Arnie's video, which I know you did, Alex, it really says it all about our company and our CEO and how important it is to take care of our people. So again, I think we'll start hiring. I'm very, very bullish and very optimistic about next year. And I think we'll start hiring again in our hotels as we get busier in the distant future. We're already starting to in certain parts of the world.
Well, in addition to, as you said, your associates are sort of your pathway to happy customers as well. So let's just go back and talk about the all-important customers. Clearly, everybody is stressed these days. Often travel is one way to relieve that stress. So you actually may be part of the solution. But I'm just kind of curious, are there any special programs or ideas other than the cleanliness, obviously, which is a big issue? And by the way, we do have a question about the ventilation systems and the HVAC systems, which of course that's another area that everybody's becoming an expert in these days. But besides sort of the physical things that you're doing to relieve stress, anything else that you are trying to do or thinking about doing to sort of help the customers in this time of anxiety?
Sure. Well, I'll give you another example. Something that we kind of spun up and came up with throughout this crisis is a new program called Work from Anywhere with Marriott Bonvoy. Yeah. And we said, people are working from home, but people are getting really tired of working from home, or it's really impacting their mental health. They need to get out and they're not going to go back to their offices because they're not open yet. And we talked to a lot of our top customers, Microsoft, Accenture, Deloitte, Salesforce, I could go on and on, about participating in a program with us to use our hotel rooms essentially as offices. And so we called it Work from Anywhere with Marriott Bonvoy. We have a community of our members who we talk to about ideas, and over 40% of them said, yeah, I'd go work for a day in a hotel room. So check in at 6 a.m., check out at 6 p.m., depending on the brand. If it's a Ritz-Carlton, it's one set of offerings, or a Sheraton or Courtyard different. So maybe you get an F&B credit, you get free Wi-Fi, whatever, different things that go along with your day pass. There's day pass, stay pass, and play pass. So there's different packages that maybe you want to go for a couple days of work and then stay over for the weekend, right? So you want to do a combination of both business and pleasure. So really trying to figure out this idea that people need a change of scenery. They want to do something different. So how can our hotel rooms, they have great Wi-Fi, private bathroom, just a change of scenery again. So we came up with this program, and it's actually been, pretty successful. I mean, we'll see if it lasts after this is over, but some of our top corporate accounts actually let their employees do it and get reimbursed. So they gave it to them as kind of a thank you, or a way to give them a little break from the mental stress of all this working from home. And so it's really been kind of a neat thing to experiment with. And, to some extent, parts of it will probably live on beyond the pandemic. I can see some of the offerings and some of the packages, but that's just one example of a creative customer solution. There was a need our customers have, and we were able to meet it. I'll give you one more example, Alex, is that, our Marriott Bonvoy members, they can't earn points from traveling. They can earn points if they do day pass, by the way. But so we said a lot of our very best customers have our co-brand credit card. And so we said, well, how can we help our customers there? Well, nobody's traveling, but they're buying gas and groceries. So we give them 10 times points on gas and groceries. So you could way to earn Marriott Bonvoy points, a lot of them, through what you're actually purchasing right now in the middle of the pandemic, groceries, or we did it for restaurants when you do, order in. And so things like that, so that we met our customers where they are, if you will, right? That's where they were spending. That's what they were doing. How can we let them earn points then and then use them for a vacation later? So those are a couple examples of us thinking creatively about meeting our customers where they are.
Yeah. Well, they're great examples, and I'm excited about your optimism. It's amazing. Marriott recently announced a small third quarter profit, so you're well on your way, and that's very exciting. I did want to spend a little bit of time, and we can come back with some of the questions from the audience to talk more about Marriott, but I just want to talk a little bit about you and your career as well. And as I mentioned in the introduction, that you grew up in a hotel industry family, so maybe you could give us a little bit of a insight into that and how that helped to launch your career as well.
Sure. Well, my family owns and operates a small boutique hotel on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and has had a number of different restaurants over the years in the D.C. area. And so I have 5 younger siblings. And so I really grew up in this business from a very young age. Maybe I was working before I should have been, but I was working in the family business. I've worked the front desk, I've cleaned rooms, I've waited tables, I've, been, managed my siblings who've all worked there too. So at a very young age, I learned to love the hotel business, the restaurant business, and also learn how really hard it is. And I think because my family's business was on Capitol Hill, just 2 blocks from the Capitol, across the street from Union Station, there was a very interesting clientele, very global clientele. I mean, it really is, DC is a dynamic place, and the location of their business was right in the heart of where a lot of things were going on. So the customers were always fascinating that came into my family's business over the years. So I learned at a young age how much I love the business, how hard it is. And I also learned from my parents that it is all about taking care of the people that work in the business. That's the way you're successful. And my mom and dad were amazing. I mean, if people didn't have somewhere to go on Christmas in their business, or, we celebrate Christmas, they'd come to our house, or Thanksgiving. And it really was the people that worked in my family's business were part of our family. I mean, there's people I've known my whole life almost, and it's been really nice. And then when I went to Marriott, I found, I don't mean to sound corny when I say this, but I found the same culture, right, of taking care of associates, Mr. Marriott says, our founder said, and Mr. Marriott always says, take care of the associate will take care of the guest, and the guest will come back again and again. And that's kind of how I grew up. Not nearly as fancy as the Marriotts, but, you know, in my small way. And so I just fell in love with the business, and I always knew that in some way, shape, or form, that's what I would spend my life doing. So yeah, so I started at a very young age.
And the business has clearly evolved during that time. So I'm curious, how did you, in particular, given that IT and digital reports to you, and that's probably where there's been the most changes over the last couple of decades. How did you,
Right.
you have an MBA from William and Mary, and so you studied, probably like many of our students, courses in information systems, but how did you pick up the knowledge that you needed along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I love the hotel business. I love working for my family business, but I did really quickly want to do something different. You know, I didn't want to work for my family business forever. So that is why I, you know, went to work for Hilton briefly, then got my MBA, and then have been at Marriott ever since. And I also wanted to, when I was getting my MBA, had a concentration in finance. I was always interested in the finance side of the business and the real estate development side of it. So that's actually where I started, is in finance, and again, on the real estate development side of it. As I'm sure you know, Alex, I'm not sure if all your students do. Marriott really doesn't own any of our hotels. I think we own like 15 hotels out of our 8,000, and they're all for sale if anyone would like to buy a hotel. But you know, we're really in the management and franchise business, right? So finding the right real estate development partners is critical to our growth. So I was really interested in that side of the business too, not just the operating side of it, which I'd been in growing up, but the development and real estate side of it. So that really was something that I had a passion for and spent the first part of my career on. And then I just started taking on, I moved into sales and marketing and started doing a bunch of different jobs. And I always also loved technology. I should say I'm not a technologist by training. Everything I've learned has been just through having the discipline report up through me. But I did, you know, realize quickly that technology is a tool. And by the way, you know, you mentioned this, over the past decade, our business has been very disrupted by technology. And you think about the growth of the OTAs, you know, starting with Expedia and Booking.com, and now Airbnb. Technology has been a massive disruptor in our industry. So, you know, it's a little bit, if you can't beat them, join them. So we decided that we were going to leverage technology to the greatest extent possible. I mean, Marriott.com, in 2019, before things got so tough, we did $25 billion just on Marriott.com, making it one of the largest retail websites in the world. We actually do more gross sales than Walmart and Apple. Now, that's a little misleading because everybody buys travel online these days pretty much, but the website and the app are some of the largest in the world in terms of gross sales. So we quickly realized that technology is key to our success. And that, you know, it's just, again, and part of it was a competitive response to the disruption that we'd faced. So I am not, again, I am not our CIO reports to me. I don't know how to code, and that's not my background, but I have learned a lot over the past 7 or 8 years since that job's been in my area of responsibility. More importantly, about really the business applications of technology and how it can be used as a tool to help our business grow and thrive.
Wonderful. And the other area that strikes me as one that you're very involved in, that it has become a center for many companies in different industries, is the focus both on inclusion and social impact and sustainability, if I can obviously treat different areas, but often grouped together. And you're involved in all three of those in terms of the board of directors groups focused on those. I'm just curious, it's something that we focus a lot on at the Carey Business School. And I'm just curious sort of how that change has materialized at Marriott, and what you view are sort of the really long lasting value that you're providing to society through the industry at large.
Yeah, I am very passionate about this topic, and so is Arnie, our CEO. The multiple topics you mentioned: diversity, inclusion, the environment, being a good corporate citizen. ESG, right, is the buzzword now, but Marriott, way before that was the buzzword. Marriott was committed to these things way before that. And diversity and inclusion, I'll start with that. I've worked at Marriott a very long time. I mentioned almost 24 years, and I've seen the company change a lot. It is just to give you a statistic, Arnie Sorensen, our CEO's direct reports, 50% of them are women. I mean, gender equity in the C-suite at a Fortune 200 company, whatever we are now, that's pretty extraordinary, right? And that gender equity goes down to all the levels of leadership. I mean, we have a goal to be 50-50 with the top 800 positions by 2025. And I think we're going to hit that goal for sure. So, and not just a commitment to gender equity, but also diversity is that, means different things in different countries, but whether it's race, religion, sexual orientation, thought, it doesn't matter. There's a deep commitment to diversity at Marriott. And I'm sure your students have all read all the statistics that companies that have a commitment to diversity and actually really have diversity, they have better performance. Our board of directors has 4 women on the board of directors. Home Depot actually has 3 women. So I think, and people of color on our board, and Home Depot, another great company, by the way, Home Depot. But, I think that this commitment to diversity is really important. And also our customer base is so diverse. Well, everybody's customer base is so diverse. So your management, your team should look like your customer base. So Marriott's made a lot of progress there. Also very committed to the environment. We do a lot to make sure that, try to build LEED certified hotels whenever we can. Make sure that we're doing a lot with food waste. I can't remember all the statistics right now, but there is an incredible impact on carbon emissions from all the food waste in the world. So what can we do to have less food waste, right? These buffets that you can have sometimes can be really wasteful. So how do we use technology to see what's selling and moving and there's not going to be buffets for a while now because of COVID-19, but how can we eliminate food waste? Hotels have a lot of water. So we're very committed to being good global citizens. We have done a lot around human trafficking. Sadly, hotels are often a place where there's a lot of human trafficking. We have rolled out training, see something, say something. We did it for our hotels, and then we shared it with the whole industry to stop human trafficking, which happens all over the world. So, I mean, you got me on my favorite topic, which is what we can all do to make the world a better place. And I feel grateful to work for a company that's very committed to that.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful to hear that. Absolutely. A couple of closing questions maybe, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. First of all, obviously we have a lot of MBA students and MBA alumni, so I'm just kind of curious if you have any advice that you want to share with them in terms of, in particular, those that are starting their careers at this point.
Well, for me, my advice would be for anyone starting out in their career is to, first of all, this one I think maybe is pretty straightforward. Find something that you love to do. I am a big believer that if you love doing something, not every day, all the time, nothing's perfect, but if you really love what you're doing, you're going to excel at it. So find something that you love. And then in terms of a company, I think it is really, really important to find a company that's aligned with your values. And that speaks to who you are and what's important to you, and has a culture that resonates with you. My Marriott, I'm very blessed that I found a company that really resonates with my values, the way I see the world. It's a very, I always say everyone at Marriott, we are in hospitality, is extremely nice, but also extremely results oriented and driven. They can coexist, right? It's not, some companies have a culture that might be a little bit more, different. But so anyhow, my advice would be find an industry and a field that you love, and a company, right? There can be, even in the same industry, companies with different cultures, and because I think that's what makes people stay at companies. That's why I've stayed at Marriott all these years, is because of the people and the culture. And of course, as I've mentioned, I love the business. So that would be my advice. Life's too short not to be doing something that you enjoy, at least most days.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Oh, I was getting some echo there. One of the things that we always emphasize, not only for our students, but our faculty and staff, is about lifelong learning and
Yeah.
boundless curiosity, which is one of our values. So as a leader that you've been in leadership roles now for many years, I'm just kind of curious, your learning in particular, going back to the pandemic now, in terms of like, are there leadership lessons, even after all these years, you just looking back over the last year, just kind of heightened what you think is really important in leadership?
Well, this year has been the most difficult of my career by far. And I think some things that I always knew became even more true to me this year. And I think the most important one is the importance of empathy as a leader. And I think the importance of listening. Like we have to listen, we really had to listen to our customers and our associates throughout this thing. I think the importance of decision making, even with imperfect information, we have to, right? We have to have the courage to make decisions quickly when you're living through something like this, because you won't survive if you don't, really. So I think, these are things, of course, I knew and had experienced other downturns or other times, but it just really became clear. And again, I think the key is being transparent, open, honest with people during things like this. Again, I had to eliminate jobs for people and friends I've had for over 20 years, right? How do you do that if you don't do it, if you don't have empathy and do it in a way that's honest, transparent, and as straightforward as you can do? So I think, those are lessons that and values I believed in before, but they really hit home this year during this pandemic and during this really, very, very tough time for our company and our industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we do have a couple of questions, so why don't I start with those? And I know that Marriott obviously has become very sizable, as you said, a large Fortune 200 company. And a lot of that happened through consolidations or acquisitions, rather. And I know you were involved in that on the finance side as well. So the question is, given the disruption and consolidation across industries right now, would Marriott consider further expansion in the future?
Well, sure, absolutely. I mean, we're a growth company, right? So how we're going to grow will be interesting to see. The Starwood acquisition in 2016 was the biggest deal ever done in our industry, right? That's what made Marriott the largest hotel company in the world. And being largest doesn't matter if you're not best. So the goal isn't to be the biggest, it's to be the best. But so that acquisition was really important. It brought us up to 30 brands. It gave us the size and scale to invest in technology. Part of the reason you need to be big these days is you need the money to invest in technology, which isn't cheap. So that was really important. Could Marriott buy another hotel company? Sure, that's possible. But where I also see us expanding in is other travel categories besides hotels. I mentioned homes and villas, right? That is a growing segment. Home rentals. Now, I should mention we are in the premium and luxury space. We don't do, one bedrooms or, anything that's in the lower end. You have to be professionally managed home. We don't just let anyone put their home on our site. So we have a very specific business model around premium and luxury and professionally managed homes. And we have standards like that we make people adhere to, or we don't let them stay in our program. So I see that business growing. It will never be the main business, but I could see it growing. We're launching next year Ritz-Carlton yachts. Our first ship will sail, luxury yacht will sail in spring, summer. We're still navigating that with the COVID-19, but the Ritz-Carlton brand extensions I think are quite powerful and interesting to think about. So the first ship, believe it or not, is already sold out, and there's multiple other ships under construction. So getting, again, these are relative to our hotel business, right? Smaller, but getting into, we're doing a lot of interesting partnerships around travel. I mentioned tours and activities and experiences. We've launched a business there. People want to, when they, particularly on leisure trips, do things outside the hotel that could be anything we've started it's called Tours and Activities by Marriott Bonvoy, of course, tied to our loyalty program. But we have a whole set of offerings around anything from, you know, I don't know, a wine and cheese tour in Venice to a, you know, behind the scenes tour of Downton Abbey to, even simple things like the bus tour in London, right? So more, you know, common touristy activities up to more bespoke, interesting things and, you know, throughout Asia, all around the world. So the tours and activities business. So I see us growing both our core hotel business, managing franchising hotels. Of course, we'll grow that, either both a combination, I'm sure, of organic growth and M&A, and then we'll grow other travel categories. But it's really the flywheel, because the more offerings we have, the more people want to be in Marriott Bonvoy. If you have a choice between, I won't name our top competitor, their loyalty program and our loyalty program, and you can use your points not only for hotels, but for homes and villas and for a yacht and for food and beverage and for ride sharing partnerships. And that's where we're leaning into all of those things. I think you're going to choose, fundamentally, we have to have awesome hotels and brands, but I think you're going to choose us. So we're going to grow by getting into other travel categories. We're not going to get into, I mean, we're going to stay true to our DNA in terms of travel experiences. But I see us growing in that way, in addition to perhaps more M&A on the hotel side. But we have to grow. That's the key, right? We're a growth company. So how do we continue to grow our business?
Great. And a question that just came in, which I'll read it and then we can discuss. Are you seeing distressed hotel acquisitions since the pandemic? Now, you did mention that you're not owning hotels. In fact, the 15 that you have that are for sale. But in terms of sort of the industry consolidation, is there something happening there that you all are focused on?
Yeah, I mean, a very important stakeholder for us are our hotel owners. We don't exist without them. Again, we need to have these great partners that own the real estate. And I probably didn't talk about them enough. I think because I spend my day job a lot of times thinking about our customers, given what I do for a living, but the owners are, very, very important stakeholders for us. And a lot of them are going through really, really tough times. I can speak for my family business. They're going through tough times. It's a really, really tough time to own a hotel right now, right? So I think right now, surprisingly, we're not seeing as many close as you might think, because I think they're getting forbearance. And I think a lot of banks are saying, wait, I'm not going to take the keys back. I don't want an operating business, right? So they're trying to work it out with our owners. Now, how long that goes on, we'll see. But we're not seeing as much as maybe you would suspect we're seeing in terms of people losing their hotels. I'm not saying we're not seeing any, but I think there's this kind of situation where people are trying to see how they can work it out, right? Again, do banks want to take all these hotels back? There's that. I think what does happen in downturns is some hotels flip to our brands, actually. Weaker brands, they say, you know what, times are tough. I'm going to flip to Marriott because Marriott has stronger engines and pipes, much bigger website, much bigger loyalty program. So we actually, in economic downturns, see a lot of conversions typically where people are flipping to our brands versus us losing hotels. Again, there's exceptions to this, and there will be some people that lose their hotels coming out of this. I don't mean to imply there won't be, but so far it hasn't been as bad as maybe you would think.
Right. Interesting. Another question which is focused on the pandemic again. What is one strategy decision that you think helped Marriott get through the pandemic and bounce back? I know you've talked about a lot, but is there one in particular that stands out?
One strategy decision. Well, to be honest, I think the decision to move quickly to make the cuts we needed to get the financing shored up was it, really. I mean, I always say we really kind of, we saved the company, helped the company get through. It was really between, April and September, all the work we did then to make the very painful cuts that we had to demonstrate to the banks that we could get the the financing we needed. We also made a strategic decision to shore up our liquidity. We did a pre-purchase of our loyalty points from the credit cards, not to get too deep into that, but we have relationships with JP Morgan Chase and Amex who buy Marriott Bonvoy points from us that they give to the card holders of the Bonvoy credit card. And we arranged a pre-purchase of points. Of course, they don't do that for free. A pre-purchase of points that gave us close to $1 billion in liquidity. So some of the financing decisions that we made and the painful, quick decisions we made around cuts to warrant that financing, to earn that financing with the banks, I think really got us through. They weren't easy, but in terms of like bigger picture strategy things, I'd mention those. And to your point, I've talked about a number of things that we did at the hotel level to meet customer needs and associate needs. And so there was, many, many balls in the air, particularly in the second quarter, which was the worst of it for us.
So again, a related question that you may have already sort of touched on this, in particular when you were talking about the key on the phone in the app. The question is, are there any practices that will continue past the pandemic, in particular opportunities that the pandemic exposed that normally would have been overlooked? So I think many of us in our businesses are saying, yeah, wow, why were we doing it this way? Now that we're doing it this way, this makes a lot more sense for us, right? So anything like that you'd have examples to share?
Well, for sure, some of the things on the mobile app are going to stick. People are going to check in and check out on their phone and go right to the room, and they're going to say, I love this. Like, I'm going to always do this. I wouldn't have tried it before, but now I have. It's kind of like how the whole world's gotten used to using Zoom and Teams and WebEx to do virtual, work from home. Some of that, by the way, probably will continue. Another thing where and who knows if some of this work from anywhere with Marriott Bonvoy will stick. I think some will, right? Using hotels more as, it depends on how companies open up their offices again. If people don't have as much space, right, they don't open their office buildings up, maybe that will go on longer, right? Or they have half as much space. So that could stick. The stuff with the mobile app will for sure. The other thing we've been experimenting with a lot where I could see some of this continuing on is hybrid meetings, right? We just launched a series of meetings where, we just did one at the Ritz-Carlton in Tyson's Corner as an example, where we said we had about 50 people there live, socially distanced and all that. And then we had massive technology and cameras, and we zoomed in another 300 people. So it was a hybrid meeting. Half the people were there, well, not half, some of the people were there in person. The majority in this example were zooming in, but you could do a 50-50, right? Half the people there live, half the people there in person. And maybe some of that will stick for a while, right? This idea of hybrid meetings, that you use technology in a different way. And it was pretty successful. We had socially distanced coffee breaks and, followed all the protocols. And I think some of that may stick around for a while. I mean, those are a few examples I can think of off the top of my head.
So there's one question asking us to look back. And since I won't be able to say this for many more days, 2020 hindsight, if you could rewind by 1 year, what would you do differently? Are there mitigation plans you would put in place to manage the risk and changes we are facing today? But maybe you can answer that even more generally, again, with 2020 hindsight, anything that you would have done differently given, the crazy, unprecedented crisis that we had to work through?
Well, I probably would have supercharged some of these technology solutions that we were already starting on, but we could have moved quicker on, and then they would have been more in place and ready to go faster. That
Right.
would be one example. I mean, this pandemic, Alex, was so overwhelming and big that it is kind of hard to imagine how I never would have imagined it. And not that I mean, just to give you a little context on how bad it was, I think this is helpful. In 9/11, when the Twin Towers were hit, 9/11, our worst quarter was we call it RevPAR. It's same store sales essentially. Our worst quarter was -15. In 2008, 8 and 9, the Great Recession, our worst quarter was down negative 25%, our equivalent of same store sales. This time in April and May, our business was down 90%. Our second quarter was down 85%. So that is, almost 3 times as bad as those other 2 events combined. So it was that big. Bill Marriott, 89, almost 89 years old. I was on a call with him recently and he said, Stephanie, this isn't my first rodeo. I've been around a long time, right? He's lived through the Great Depression. He's lived through all, like his business, he's lived through a lot. He said, this isn't my first rodeo, but it's certainly the worst. I mean, that's pretty powerful from Bill Marriott to say that with his experience. So I don't know, it was so unprecedented, but again, I think supercharging and being more ahead on some of the technology solutions would have been one thing. There's probably some things on the finance side we could have done a little bit different. I'll leave that to our CFO to opine upon though, and not get too into that space. And then, yeah, I'm proud of, I'm sure we could have done things better, and I'm sure we could have, I'm not thinking of everything right now, but overall I'd say I'm pretty proud of the way we've navigated this. And I'm just very happy there's a vaccine that's being rolled out, and I'm extremely hopeful that next year is going to be a good year.
Well, and that's the optimistic, we're running out of time. The couple of questions were, are you optimistic for the future of travel? And condensed form of this question, would you recommend the travel or the hospitality industry rather for family members that are choosing new careers? And I guess the answer is going to be yes on this, but I'll let you end on that note.
No, it would be. I'll tell you, this is a cyclical business we're in by far, right? And, this was the worst, as I gave you some context for a minute ago, but it bounces back quick because people love to travel. I mean, some of the statistics on travel are amazing. I mean, before the pandemic hit, there was well over 1 billion outbound trips taken. I'm not talking about inter-country travel. I'm talking about international trips, over 1 billion trips taken in 2019. And I honestly believe that travel heals, travel makes the world a better place. Marriott's in 140 something countries, as I mentioned. I have a little ticker on my phone. I've been to 82 countries so far. I'm only, I'm about halfway through all the countries, but every time I travel, I'm reminded of everybody loves their family. Everybody wants clean water and air and food. And I do think travel heals. And in a world that's very divided now, and in a country that's very divided, I think we need more things that heal and connect people and make us see that there's more that makes us the same than different. And I think travel does that. So I think the industry is only going to continue to grow and flourish. And I'm truly optimistic about our business. So I do hope some of your fine students consider whether it's the hotel business or other, of course, the travel and tourism business is beyond hotels. I certainly hope some of your students consider it. And I won't do any recruiting right now, but if anyone ever wants to think about Marriott, they can certainly send me an email. Am I allowed to do that, Alex? Do some recruiting?
Absolutely. It's a wonderful note to end on. And at 82 countries that you've done, I've got a lot of catching up to do. So we're all, I think, anxious to get back out there and to use and generate more Bonvoy points. So Stephanie, thanks so much. I just want to thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you being our distinguished speaker. It's been wonderful hearing from you. So thank you so much. And I also want to— Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephanie. And I also wanted just to mention to our audience that we hope to see you again in the new year. We actually have a panel presentation on January 25th. Stephanie had just mentioned how she was anxious for the vaccine, and I think we all are. So not surprisingly, our panel discussion is going to be on the COVID-19 vaccine. It'll be discussing the development to date with the CEO of a company who was one of the developers of the vaccine, with folks who are expert in the distribution and production of the vaccine as well. So it's going to be a great panel discussion, and so we hopefully see you there. on January 25th. And until then, I hope everybody has a happy and a healthy holiday season.